Heat shimmer rolls over the desert at the Naval Special Warfare training site outside La Posta as 6 a.m. settles in. Mirage bends the far hills, and the wind skates across the hard pan like a thin blade. 13 elite shooters have already cycled through and missed the E-type silhouette at 3,600 meters. The range smells like dust, clean, and quiet effort. Petty Officer First Class Riley Hart stands off the firing line in NWU Type 3. Still as shade against bright sand. She watches the target lane without blinking, breathing slow, hands loose. Mind settled on fundamentals. Senior Chief Petty Officer Daniel Rourke works the primary spotting scope, glass steady, calling light, wind, and boiling mirage with professional restraint. His tone keeps the line honest and the pace measured. Staff Sergeant Cole Madden lets a dismissive look flicker, a shrug shaped by ego and habit rather than malice. The range safety officer shuts the air down before any words grow into distractions, declaring range is hot and quiet on the line with authority. A ceasefire call sits ready on his tongue like a safety lever. Discipline tightens around the shooters until even the wind feels quieter. Lieutenant Commander Emily Park stands behind the glassed line as an observer. Hands folded, eyes on procedures. She knows Riley is authorized to attempt the drill and does not need to say a thing to prove it. Rank and roles are clear, and no one crosses the RSO. The scene holds steady inside the rules that keep people whole. Riley steps closer and requests one attempt under standard range rules. Voice even and direct without drama. Rourke weighs nothing but the checklist and grants it with a nod that belongs to the job. Boots press grit. An elbow finds the mat. The spotting scope settles, and the air seems to lose a degree. The line falls into disciplined silence as she moves to the rifle, and the promise of a clean break hangs in the heat. The first lessons happened on a milk crate in the New Mexico desert, where the air felt thin and dry. A .22 LR bolt action lay heavy across small hands, the stock warm from the sun. Her father, a former Marine, taught patience first, then breath control, then how a steady cheek weld makes the world stop shaking. He showed her how to watch heat shimmer and grass tips so she could imagine the bullet path before a trigger press. Misses were notes, not failures, and the dirt told the truth without attitude. She learned to reset her shoulders, settle the muzzle, and let the lungs fall quiet at the natural pause. At 18, she chose the United States Navy to build her own road. Master-at-Arms training came hard and fair, and she took the work without noise. She kept stacking schools that left calluses on mind and hands. Close quarters combat, advanced marksmanship, and combat medicine. The rhythm was always the same. Show up early, stay late. Log what worked, fix what did not. She learned to carry confidence without swagger and to listen when people with miles on them spoke. The dry smell of the range and the clean slip of a bolt became the normal day. At Dam Neck Annex, she met Senior Chief Jack Northstar Nolan, and a new layer of craft began. He coached her to read mirage in near, mid, and far bands so wind turned from guess to map. He made Coriolis and spindrift feel real by tying them to bearings and distance instead of math on a board. He pushed a simple habit set: dial elevation, hold wind on the reticle, confirm with trace, correct without drama. He checked her dope book and expected clear entries with conditions, holds, and results written the same way every time. He respected range SOP to the letter and expected the same from her. Eye and ear protection squared away. Muzzle discipline, perfect. Communications short and useful. The lessons did not turn her into a superhero, and that was the point. They turned long shots into a process anyone could follow if they did the work. When days got loud, she carried a quiet mantra that belonged to both of them. Trust the math. Do the fundamentals. And let the shot happen. The Korengal woke like a stone spine under winter stars. Steep rock, broken draws, and switchback wind that never settled. 2:30 a.m. felt thinner than midnight as the joint element slid along the ridge and checked arcs. Petty Officer First Class Riley Hart lay behind glass as spotter for Senior Chief Jack North Star Nolan. Watching angles close, then open in jerks of terrain. Radio calls stayed short and clean. Distance. Bearing. Movement. All business. The hit came from elevation and right. A hard crack that punched down the slope. Nolan folded to a knee with a spreading bloom under his plate line. Breath cutting short. Riley was on him with TCCC steps, already stacked in her head and hands. Massive hemorrhage, first with hemostatic gauze, packed deep in firm pressure that did not quit. She checked airway and breathing and watched for asymmetric rise. She sealed the chest when the wound told her air was pulling where it should not, and covered him against the night to slow the cold that steals minutes. Her Casevac request went out tight and plain with grid. Casualty count. Mechanism. And current interventions. She felt for a pulse where it should be easy, and found only the long quiet of a body that had taken too much. Fire pinned the element from a high outcrop beyond 1,400 meters. The team needed the rifle working again and the lane cleared. Riley slid to the Mk22, mod 7 inches 300 Winchester Magnum, and settled the stock on bone. She dialed elevation only and held wind on the reticle, reading mirage and near, mid, and far bands while her mind tagged Coriolis and Spindrift as real. The first round went to learn the air, and she watched the trace arc into the slope just off the mark. She adjusted the hold a small bite and sent the next. The impact snapped on the rock where the firing lane had been, and the outcrop went quiet. The squad leaders called movement, and the element began to peel away under control. They moved out with the night still cold, and the dust now sharper in her mouth. Riley took the rifle and the weight that came with it because someone had to. She did not make a promise to the dark or to the mountain. She carried Nolan forward the way he taught her and let the fundamentals carry the rest. 6:15 a.m. lays a pale edge on the Naval Special Warfare range outside La Posta. Heat shimmer already crawls over the flats and the wind tickles dust into low curls. Petty Officer First Class Riley Hart kneels beside a Barrett MRAD Mk22, set up as a test evaluation platform in 375, SHATAC with a Schmidt and Bender PM2, 5-45 by 56 riding the rail. Cutting edge, laser 350 grain rounds sit staged. Brass clean and necks unscarred. She loads the bipod into the mat until the legs bite and settles a rear bag under the toe of the stock. Cheek piece and length of pull come into line with quiet clicks she does not rush. She sets parallax until the target lane clears and confirms zero stop so the elevation turret returns without guesswork. Natural point of aim gets checked and rechecked until the reticle rests by itself. Senior Chief Petty Officer Daniel Rourke works as primary spotter. Glass steady and voice even. He confirms range with a laser rangefinder and pulls weather from a kestrel, so density, altitude, and pressure are real and not hopeful. His calls stay short and useful. Wind light near. Building midfield. Far band unsettled. The range safety officer makes the lane simple to obey with clear control words that carry range is hot. Quiet on the line. Ceasefire on standby. Riley dials elevation with a plan built for a total of 90 minutes of angle from rail and Mount Cant, saving optic travel for the long arc. She refuses to dial wind and keeps her hold on the reticle where corrections come faster. Coriolis and Spindrift are not footnotes at this distance, so she tags them to the hold the way Nolan taught her. She watches mirage and near, mid, and far bands until a first wind picture forms. Dust grits under her elbow as the stock settles into bone and the scope turns the field into a tunnel. Voices fade to the small sounds of cloth and breath and the slow heartbeat that sets timing. Rourke goes quiet to protect the concentration he asked for, and the line listens. Riley stays behind the glass with elevation set and a wind hold ready, waiting for the clean window. 6:20 a.m. presses a pale light over the Naval Special Warfare range near La Posta as the line readies to go hot. Heat shimmer makes the far dirt twitch, and the mirage paints the lane in slow waves. Staff Sergeant Cole Madden leans toward a buddy and lets a quiet comment slip about a small bet. More habit than malice. The air around the firing points tightens like a pulled strap. The range safety officer calls the cadence with authority that leaves no room for echo. Range is hot, comes first, and heads tuck back into work without delay. Quiet on the line follows, and mouths seal as if by switch. Ceasefire sits loaded for any mistake, and everyone feels it. Petty Officer First Class Riley Hart does not look up from the glass. The rifle rests in the mat and her cheek weld is steady. Breath slow. Elbows planted where grit bites through fabric. Senior Chief Petty Officer Daniel Rourke keeps communication short and clean. The kind that respects concentration and safety. He confirms that coaching will be minimal, and then he lets the stillness do its job. Lieutenant Commander Emily Park watches from behind the shooters with hands folded and posture easy. She respects the chain of command and leaves range control to the RSO. Eyes moving from target lane to wind signs and back. No one crosses roles and no one tries to help with words that break focus. The only sounds are fabric creak, a low breeze, and the small movements that settle a body into purpose. Discipline locks the lane until even the heat seems to listen. Riley checks natural point of aim again and lets her breathing fall into a calmer rhythm. Rourke looks at the mirage, the flags, and the clock, then gives a simple standby. Send it when ready. The line answers with silence, and the rifle feels heavier in a good way as she waits for the clean window. 6:25 a.m. hangs light and steady over the Naval Special Warfare range near La Posta. Petty Officer First Class Riley Hart settles behind a Barrett MRAD Mk22 in a test evaluation 375 SHATAC setup with a Schmidt & Bender PM2 5-45 by 56 locked in. Cutting-edge laser 350 grain rounds rest in reach. Brass bright. 90 minutes of angle of total can't sit built into rail and mount, so the elevation dial has room to work. The range safety officer owns the lane and the line stays silent. Senior Chief Petty Officer Daniel Rourke stands on the glass. Voice low and spare only when needed. He confirms a rare stable band through near, mid, and far mirage along the target lane and keeps the coaching minimal. Kestrel data holds pressure and temperature real, so the dope book for this test platform matches the morning. Riley dials elevation and leaves wind to the reticle. She notes Coriolis and spindrift as meaningful and tags them into her hold the way she was taught. The press is clean with follow-through. Shoulders quiet. Stock settled into bone. Muzzle returns straight back into the bag. Trace floats and the weight turns long enough to count. Then the E-type silhouette answers with a confirmed impact. No one moves. Rourke reads the lane and keeps her in the pocket while the air holds its calm window. He authorizes a second round with the same flat professionalism that has run this range for years. Riley trims a small wind hold on the reticle rather than dialing anything and sends the next shot with the same quiet press. Time stretches again and the rifle rides back into the bag like it belongs there. The lane gives them another clear answer as the silhouette swings with a second confirmed impact inside the scoring zone. The range safety officer keeps the line disciplined and the noise level stays at 0. Heat shimmer continues to roll as if nothing happened at all. Rourke confirms both impacts in a level voice that carries just far enough. No cheering follows. Only the sound of breath and fabric and a bolt eased with care. The proof sits in the target and in the record book. But it also sits in the steps that made it happen. Fundamentals done well are louder than anything else. 6:35 a.m. settles over the desert range like a lid on a pot. Heat shimmer still dances, but the noise level is the same quiet that follows work done right. Commander Thomas Avery steps from a vehicle and walks straight to Senior Chief Petty Officer Daniel Rourke. They speak off to the side. Short sentences. Steady faces. The kind of exchange that respects both privacy and purpose. Avery acknowledges what needs to be known without spilling what does not belong on a firing line. Training lineage is confirmed in principle, not in details. And the conversation ends with a nod that carries weight. Chain of command breathes through the moment without raising its voice. The range safety officer watches the line and keeps it safe while the leaders do their jobs. Rourke returns to the shooters and keeps his message clean and brief. Petty Officer First Class Riley Hart is a resource and will be treated with professional respect by this line and any line she instructs. Titles are correct. Tone is even. And nothing in his voice invites debate. The point lands because the morning already proved it. Staff Sergeant Cole Madden steps forward at a respectful distance and delivers a formal apology to Riley. She accepts with proper military courtesy, steady posture, and a small nod that leaves no room for theatrics. There is no handshake that breaks range control and no side talk that drifts into gossip. It feels like a correction recorded in a logbook so the team can move on. The range safety officer resets the lane and the routine takes over again. Targets are marked. Data is logged. And brass is policed with the same care used before the hits. The work turns back to process under the same rules that kept everyone safe at first light. Validation lives on the steel and in the discipline that put it there. Not in speeches. And the range gets back to business. 3 weeks later, the classroom at Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado smells like dry erase ink and CLP. Petty Officer First Class Riley Hart stands at the board with a simple wind chart and a photo of Senior Chief Jack North Star Nolan taped near the corner. Senior Chief Petty Officer Daniel Rourke sits in the back with a notebook open, quiet and intent. Staff Sergeant Cole Madden takes the front seat and writes as if the pen has a job to do. Riley outlines the plan for advanced long-range marksmanship in steady blocks. Fundamentals first. Natural point of aim. Respiratory pause. Trigger press. And follow through. Then the extreme long-range pieces that sit on top of those basics. Dial elevation on the Barrett MRAD Mk22. Hold wind on a reticle with a tree. Read mirage in near, mid, and far bands. And treat Coriolis and spindrift as meaningful rather than trivia. She clarifies equipment so no one leaves with a half-truth. The Mk22 test evaluation setup in 375 SHATAC built the dope that supported the long desert shot. The operational configuration is typically 338 Norma Magnum, which is what most of them will carry for real work. She walks them through translating dope between calibers using density altitude, muzzle velocity, and ballistic coefficient. Calm and methodical. No hype. The class shifts to communication and control since safety makes learning possible. Riley lays out range SOP and deference to the range safety officer who owns hot and cold calls. Spotter language is concise by design. Wind value, direction, correction, then silence. She adds a short refresher on TCCC mindset, so shooters remember that medical responsibility rides beside every drill when stress shows up. Hands go up, and the questions stay practical. Scope height over bore, prism use, cant planning, and how to confirm trace when mirage is heavy. Rourke lets the discussion breathe, and only steps in to ask for a cleaner terminology line. Madden offers a short note on how a missed wind call looks in the reticle when nerves spike. The room feels like a small team learning to share one brain. They move to the line under RSO control, and the pace turns workmanlike. Bipods load into mats. Wind calls are short. Riley checks the targets. Glances once at Nolan's photo on the desk, and tells the class that carrying lessons forward is a kind of thanks. Live fire begins, and the quiet focus says the outsider has become a resource through competence and humility. 8 p.m. settles over Naval Special Warfare Center Coronado like a cool hand. The ranges are cold, and the classrooms sit in a hush that feels earned. Petty Officer First Class Riley Hart stays behind with a small desk light and the faint smell of CLP in the air. The window is open, and the Pacific sends a slow draft through the blinds. A compass tattoo rests on her wrist as she sets a simple photo of Senior Chief Jack North Star Nolan where she can see it. The ache from Korengal arrives like weather. Real, but not dramatic. She lets it be there while she clears a space on the mat. The room answers with quiet and the soft tick of a wall clock. She runs dry fire with steady rhythm. Press. Reset. Breathe. Hold. Release. The stock fits her shoulder like a tool that remembers the hand. Between sets, she opens the dope book and reviews notes with small, neat entries that tie wind values to holds and results. She makes one correction to a margin and writes down a reminder to confirm a scope height measurement at first light. Her phone buzzes once on the desk. Commander Thomas Avery leaves a brief message that recognizes a solid start to the course and adds nothing that should not travel. Riley types a short reply that thanks him and affirms the plan to trust the math and stay with the fundamentals. The exchange is clean, courteous, and finished in less than a minute. She closes the dope book and wipes the bolt with a cloth that already smells like oil and work. Hands feel tired in a good way. Skin pulling tight over knuckles that have been honest all day. Outside, base lights stack into quiet rows and a gull drifts through the last of the glow. Riley watches the scene and understands that healing is not a speech, but a habit. She breathes in the salt and lets it out slow. The compass tattoo catches a slant of desk light and the room settles again. She powers off the lamp and leaves the photo where it is. Tomorrow will start the same way, with a checklist and a clean page. And that is enough. 6:30 p.m. leans warm over Naval Special Warfare Center Coronado as the day starts to fold into gold. The story circles back to a dry range near La Posta, where a line stood quiet under the range safety officer and Senior Chief Petty Officer Daniel Rourke watched the glass. Petty Officer First Class Riley Hart worked the Barrett MRAD Mk22 with elevation dialed and wind held on the reticle. Then placed 2 disciplined hits at 3,600 meters on an E-type silhouette. Every step followed rank, terms, and procedures that keep people safe and honest. Now, the light softens along the shoreline, and boots tap wood on a pier that smells like salt and sun. The wind here is kinder, but it still shifts and teaches the same lesson. You cannot control it, but you can learn to read it and make choices that respect what it is doing. Discipline, data, and fundamentals beat bias and noise when the stakes are real. If this story met you at the right time, add a note with the city you are watching from so the team knows where the range travels. Hit subscribe if you want the next session that breaks down reading Mirage across distance bands and how to translate dope between calibers on the Barrett MRAD Mk22. Share this with someone who needs a quiet push to trust the math in their own life and to stick with the work when it gets slow. Keep the tone of your day like a good sight picture that does not wobble more than it has to. The base settles and the last checks feel like a breath held and then released. Riley walks the pier with sore shoulders and clear eyes, and the day eases off her like a ruck dropped after a long hike. The lesson is simple and hard and worth it. Practice over ego and patience over noise. The compass tattoo on her wrist catches the last light like a tiny signal. The water holds a thin trail of gold, and the air smells like home after training. The range will open again, and the work will be there waiting. Trust the math, do the fundamentals, and let the shot happen.